we're doing. And also that we train our police officers to be guardians and not warriors in the community that they serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Price, would you like to give an opening statement?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, lawyers, the Lawyers Club, the Alameda County Bar Association, and the League of Women Voters. I must say I haven't seen this many lawyers in the same room in a couple of years now, so it's a little bit overwhelming. But I'm running for district attorney because I am a drum major for justice. For 30 years, I've worked in this community representing everyday people, solving problems, and fighting for justice. I have had the experience of successfully arguing for against racial harassment in the United States Supreme Court and creating new laws to stop sexual harassment in both education and employment. I'm a survivor of the Ohio juvenile justice and the foster care system. I got arrested when I was 13 years old in a civil rights demonstration. I got tracked into the juvenile justice and the foster care system. And I literally made it from the streets of Cincinnati to Yale College by the grace of God. I got a great education at Yale, and then I came to California and graduated from UC Berkeley Law School. And I'm a person, because of my journey, that knows to whom much is given, much is asked. I believe that the district attorney is a minister of justice. And as the next district attorney, I will lead that office with compassion, with transparency, with integrity, and a commitment to equity and engagement with our community. I've been endorsed by the Honorable Delane Easton, the Honorable Jean Quan, elected officials from Albany to Livermore, a host of Democratic clubs, unions, including the California Nurses Association. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Steward, would you like to give an opening?
Absolutely. Good evening, Alameda County Bar Association. It's great to be here and have an opportunity to have a conversation. My name is Seth Steward. I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney, and I'm excited to really talk about what we can do differently in the DA's office and how we can change the direction of the office. A little bit about me. I'm a longtime Alameda County resident. I first moved here back in 1999. Been here for quite a while. I was raised by a single mother. She taught my brother and I the values of service, excellence, and fairness. And those are the things that I bring to my entire career. I served as an assistant district attorney for Kamala Harris when she was the DA back in San Francisco. And I also served under George Gascon. In addition to that, I'm an Air Force veteran and a teacher. I teach at Oakland Tech. I teach criminal law there. In addition to that, I currently serve as the Chief of Staff for Oakland City Council member Dan Kalb, where I drafted legislation banning chokeholds and carotid restraints by the Oakland Police Department, and work to make sure that both ghost guns and ghost gun kits are banned here in the city of Oakland. I want to bring all of those policies to all of Alameda County. To make sure that we do three things primarily as the DA. One, keep families and communities safe. Two, restore trust in the DA's office. And three, restore fairness in the entire criminal justice system. And there's a number of different ways that I want to do that. Look forward to having the conversation throughout the day. At the end of this conversation, I'm going to ask for your consideration to vote for me as DA of Alameda County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steward. Mr. Wiley, would you like to make an opening statement?
I would. Alameda County Bar Association, thank you for having us this evening. We have a district attorney's office that needs new leadership. It has to be leadership that's about safety and justice, and it does not have to be a choice of one versus the other. What I represent in this race is balanced and experienced leadership. This is why I've been endorsed by some of the nation's leading civil rights attorneys. John Burris, Benjamin Crump, who represented the family of George Floyd in a number of high-profile civil rights cases. Lanita Baker, who represented the family of Breonna Taylor. Oakland NAACP President George Holland. And on the other side, I've been unanimously endorsed by all 17 police chiefs of Alameda County. And the day before yesterday, I received the endorsement of the California Police Chiefs Association. I've also been endorsed by a host of elected officials, including Eric Swalwell, Supervisor Richard Valle, the majority of the labor unions in Alameda County, and the faith community. And why have I been endorsed by such a diverse group of individuals and organizations? Because I'm not way over to the left and I'm not way over to the right. I represent the middle, where safety of the community is of primary importance, but we also have to drill down on the root causes of crime: poverty, uh, mental illness, substance abuse. And I want to read to you real quick the endorsement that I received from the Mercury News and East Bay Times. And they said, "It's hard to imagine a lawyer better prepared to take over the management of the district attorney's office, but this election is about leadership and a willingness to take on some of the tough issues of the day." And that's what I represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. I appreciate all of your opening statements. So we're going to stay with the same order for the first question. That will change over the next questions. That's just the way it ended up. So Ms. Nieves, I leave the floor to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for being here. So Mr. Wilson, we will start with you. What would you change to make the DA's office more effective in responding to the increase in violent crime since the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, the first thing I would do, and this is really simple, is enforce the law. What I can tell you right now is that's not being done. Secondly, what we're seeing in the DA's office right now is that we're down a number of district attorneys, and cases are just staying in the actual courtroom, in the actual process. They're just like stuck there because there's not enough people to handle them. There, in our Dublin office, there's 2,500 cases with only 6 attorneys handling those cases. That's unacceptable. We're not serving victims, and we aren't serving defendants. And a lot of times, men and women are staying in custody because we don't have the resources in order to deal with those cases. So first thing you have to do is enforce the law, and secondly, build up your office to better respond to what's going on in the streets.
Thank you. Ms. Price, same question. And if you need me to repeat the question, please just let me know.
Can you do that, please? Thank you.
What would you change to make the DA's office more effective in responding to the increase in violent crime since the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure. Number one, I would address the flow of ghost guns coming into our community and expand beyond that to address the proliferation of guns. Studies have shown that where you have communities that have more guns have more violence, and guns often in the hands of the wrong people lead to violence. And so we've got to stop and limit the flow of guns and target those who are actually bringing guns into this community. 15-year-olds and 13-year-old kids aren't bringing guns in here. Somebody's bringing them here and giving it to them. And we know that ghost guns have become a major problem in California. And so I would join every initiative to address that. I also would, as a district attorney, get outside of my office and start talking to young people and engaging them and helping them to create restorative justice circles and conflict resolution so that they're not so quick to pick up a gun and use it under any circumstances. And I also would address not just focus on what we see outside of the home, but we recognize that victims of domestic violence have been somewhat ignored, certainly in this conversation about violence in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Steward, moving to you, same question.
So I would make sure that we focus our resources on violent crime. We saw 134 murders in the city of Oakland alone last year. Freeway shootings across all of the Bay Area have tripled over the past 3 years, and half of those are in Alameda County. This is the type of thing that people are concerned about, and these are the type of things that the DA's office needs to focus on. We need to make sure that, one, our DAs have the resources that they need to be successful. So this is a resource allocation problem. We need to make sure that the DAs that are prosecuting violent crime have the investigators and the paralegals and the legal secretaries have all the resources they need to be successful. Two, we need to hire more DAs. We have less DAs now, and we need to be able to prosecute these crimes. Three, we need to focus on gun crimes. We need to make sure that we prosecute these crimes and make sure that people have an opportunity to feel safe and be safe. And four, we actually need to change the gun laws. So as I have in the city of Oakland, banned ghost guns, we need to ban ghost guns and ghost gun kits in all of Alameda County. Those are the things that I would do as DA to stem the rise of gun violence and violence in Alameda County. Thank you.
Okay, I assume I'm up. Well, I think that this is a great question, because this is why it is important who is the elected district attorney, because the elected district attorney will set the strategy and the initiatives of the district attorney's office in dealing with, for example, crime. And what we have to do is we have to change the strategy. And the strategy that I plan to adopt is the Crime Strategies Unit. And we will have a unit that will be a data-driven, intelligence-driven unit that will focus on what we know is about 2,000 individuals that are driving about 80% of the violent crime in Alameda County. 1,751 of those individuals are in Oakland. And we are going to have a unit that works directly with the ceasefire unit, and they're going to focus on those 1,751 individuals that are committing 1 out of every 2 murders in our county. And of that 1,750, there are about 50 individuals that we call the shooters. These are the individuals that pose the greatest danger to the community, and we will have a unit of our best lawyers that focus on those individuals.
Thank you. Annie?
Thank you. So the next order that we're going to go in is Ms. Price will go first, Mr. Steward will go second, Mr. Wiley will go third, and Mr. Wilson will go fourth. This is about mental health. Do you have a plan on how you will handle the prosecution of individuals who have mental health issues or are in mental crisis? And what is the outline of that plan? Ms. Price.
Yes, I have been in conversation with and have been endorsed by the families of the seriously mentally ill in this county, who have been challenging the way in which we address mental illness, and particularly those with serious mental illness. I have looked at and read and studied the Department of Justice notification to Alameda County based on our failures with respect to those who are suffering from mental health illness or having in crisis. And so I understand that we have to utilize, one, the resources that we actually have available to us in a much more effective, efficient way. We have to open up behavioral court. We have to create underlying partnerships with community-based organizations. The mandate of DOJ is that we have to have community-based treatment programs, community-based transition programs for those suffering from mental health. And so my plan is to work with DOJ, to work with the families, to work with the community, to create community-based programs and opportunities for us where we can actually provide treatment to people rather than incarceration. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Steward?
I think of this question as 3 central areas. The first area being what happens before somebody enters into the criminal justice system. The second bucket being once they're actually in the system. And then third, once they're actually out of the system. So with regard to the first bucket, there are a number of jurisdictions here in Alameda County that are doing amazing work. So Pleasanton, for example, has the mental health response program. Hayward has the mobile assistance community response. Responders of Oakland is macro, and then the city of Alameda has the CARE program, and then Hayward has the HEART program. What these programs do is try to address mental health at the lowest level and see if there's something you can do other than arresting somebody and sending them into the unconstitutionally bad conditions at Santa Rita Jail. And so that's the first section. The second section is to expand behavioral health court, drug court, veterans court, all of the alternative courts here in Alameda County. In 2017, 2018, of the 55,000 low-level misdemeanors that could have gone, only 2,000 of those cases went. So we need to expand eligibility. And finally, we need to make sure that we give grants to programs to successfully re-enter people back into our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Wiley?
Yes. Well, there's a couple of things. First, we've started what we call the CARES program, and it's located in the Fruitvale. And the DA's office received a grant to establish this program. And what the CARES program does is that when an individual is arrested for primarily acting out and clearly suffering some sort of mental episode, they can be taken to the CARES unit where we have a licensed psychologist. We also have a peer support specialist. This is someone who has suffered a similar either mental health issue, substance abuse, or even been formerly incarcerated, and they've come back. And so that the person has someone there that they can identify with, and we have clothing and everything to assist them. But more importantly, we have a bed in the alternative to John George if they need a longer term care. The county has been so impressed with our CARES program that they are now seeking funding to open up 2 more facilities, one in the South County and one in the East County. And we're actively training police agencies to bring some individuals that have been arrested associated with some sort of mental health breakdown to the CARES unit instead of Santa Rita. That's a start.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Wiley. So the next question.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. That's what happens when
I
you
do
laugh.
want to hear from you, Mr. Wilson.
Well, just to answer the question, I think when we talk about mental health, it starts at the street level. It starts with police officers and having units like what we have. BART has the police ambassador unit, which is what they do. There's a partnership between a police officer and a clinician who respond to mental health crisis. 40% of all BART dispatches are for mental health. But also we need to expand access to mental health treatment. One of the positive partnerships with the DA's office is the DA has partnered with La Familia with misdemeanor cases to get misdemeanor defendants who have mental health problems out of the system before they get tracked in and incarcerated. We also need to expand it to the felony level. We need beds, we need places for people to go. As a young man growing up in San Francisco during the 70s, I know that we used to have mental health treatment at the street level. When I'm district attorney, that is one of the things that I'm going to push for, expansion of more beds and more access to mental health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So the next question, we are going to start with Mr. Steward, and then Mr. Wiley, Mr. Wilson, and then Ms. Price. The question is, what is the single most important change you would make at the DA's office to address racial disparity in criminal justice?
Thank you so much for asking this question. I have a whole section on this on my website to fight racism and bias, and it's critical that we talk about it. For example, the rate of attacks against Asian Americans went up 107% last year. In the state of California, Black man has 10 times more likely to go to jail than a white man. In Alameda County, it's 20 times. So that's exactly the kind of problems we're looking at. One more stat that we need to make ourselves aware of, 44% of the people shot by law enforcement in Alameda County are Black. What we need to do are study and publish reports about the system biases, and we need to create a task force to address them. We also need to engage in robust recruiting, and we need to lead the fight against hate crimes, in particular, stopping Asian hate, and protecting our LGBTQ community. Those are the things that we need to do to fight racism and bias, and I look forward to implementing all of those policies as DA.
Well, there are several things that I plan on doing, but there are also several things that I have done and continue to do in the district attorney's office, because in addition to being the chief assistant district attorney and the only African-American in the history of Alameda County to be the chief assistant district attorney, I'm also the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's important that every member of our staff, the attorneys, the inspectors, and our support staff go through implicit bias training. And I've created a 4-part module that every employee has to participate in. In addition to that, when I ran our juvenile division between 2013 and 2017, I found a total disparity of Black and brown kids and very few white kids in our juvenile hall. And I simply asked the question, it can't just be Black kids and brown kids that are committing auto thefts. So why is it only Black kids and brown kids? By the time I left in 2017, the incarceration rates of juveniles dropped 70%. And to this day, there are only 54 juveniles in custody in Alameda County for only the most serious offenses. So there are a number of areas that I've worked on and I will continue to work on in removing the disparities in Alameda County.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
I believe you have to change the culture in the district attorney's office. We have to build trust and be transparent with the public. Part of that is training, which isn't happening now, training DAs on charging and providing discovery and case disposition and keeping data and providing that data to anyone who wants to see it, to public, to academics, expanding who we hire, people from the community. Diversity isn't your skin color. Diversity is diversity of thought. Anyone who's been in a district attorney's office knows that it's a pretty conservative institution. We need people with different trains of thought, people who think about other people as individuals and not as numbers. It's more important that you change the culture and provide ethics and professional responsibility training than anything to change the culture of what's been going on for the last 200 years. Thank you.
Ms. Price?
Can I have the question read again, please?
Sure. So what is the single most important change you would make at the DA's office to address racial disparity in the criminal justice system?
The single most important change that I will need to make when I'm elected district attorney is to hold my deputies accountable. Studies have shown that where racial disparities have riddled the system, it's been largely due to the discretionary decision-making of deputies in a particular office. And so we have to have standards whereby we hold deputies accountable. And it is about changing the culture so that folks know that it is no longer acceptable to have one standard of justice for people who live in Pleasanton and another standard of justice for people who live in Oakland. So we do have to acknowledge that there is a problem of racial disparities. People seem to be totally offended by that in 2018, but the data is there. And until you acknowledge that you have a problem, you won't be able to fix it. So first, I've got to get the office to acknowledge that there is a problem, and then we can begin to address it. One, by establishing standards, one, by publishing the data, and also using adopting new risk assessment practices that will make us more effective in protecting public safety and not relying on racial bias and racially motivated prosecutions. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question, maybe we figured this out. Mr. Wiley, you'll go first, then Mr. Wilson, then Ms. Price, then Mr. Steward. This is about, well, how would you deal, if you were elected, with allegations of prosecutorial misconduct within your office from whatever source it comes, the defense bar, other people, appellate cases? How would you deal with it?
Very upfront and very directly. That it is very, very important, whatever the perception of the public is of the district attorney's office. And it's important that anybody who walks through those doors of our justice system feel that they are going to receive fair and honest justice from the district attorney's office. And so it's very, very important that if you have any allegation of misconduct, that it be dealt with very directly and from the top. And so that's what I will do as the district attorney of Alameda County. And I mean, I think that's the way you have to do it. In order for us to have an effective office, you have to make sure that everyone is adhering to the standards that have been set forth in dealing with justice. Our job is the safety of the community, but it's also to be fair and bring fairness to our system of justice and from anyone who comes through the system, regardless of your race, creed, or color.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, would you like me to reread it?
No, I think I have. Thank you, Ms. Beles. It's part of being a government actor is that you have a responsibility to everyone, not just victims, not to yourself, but especially to defendants charged with a crime. And I believe that anytime a prosecutor cheats, knowingly cheats, hides evidence, does anything unethical in order to gain an unfair advantage, that person has to be dealt with and it can't be tolerated. You set the culture as the DA. It starts from the top. If people know what you expect from them, they will act accordingly. If you turn a blind eye to someone doing something unethical, they will keep on doing it because they believe that they can get away with it. There's a difference between hiding evidence and doing something unethical and saying something that you shouldn't have said in court. We all know that. We're trial attorneys. Sometimes in the heat of the battle, we say things, but anytime someone intentionally breaks the rules, that person needs to be terminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Price, would you like me to reread the question?
No, thank you. I hope that everyone on this Zoom read the public defender's motion from March of 2021, where they alleged and documented with appellate decisions a troubling pattern of misconduct within the DA's office, and basically described the last decade as having been infected with injustice, misconduct. And my question at the time, because I read it and I read the appellate decisions, and then I read some of the lawsuits that are pending against the DA's office right now today for prosecutorial misconduct. And my question was, we have a conviction integrity unit in the DA's office. Does that unit look at these cases? And the response I received was no. As the next district attorney, I will not tolerate prosecutorial misconduct, constitutional violations. We will have standards. We will hold people accountable. We will have transparency so that we can identify those who have a pattern of engaging in misconduct and those who have been found to have violated state bar rules will be referred to the state bar under my administration.
Thank you. Mr. Steward, would you like me to repeat the question?
That's okay. I'm ready for it.
Thank you.
Prosecutorial misconduct has no place in a DA's office. Absolutely none. It breaks the trust of the community. When I spoke with Kim Fox, who's the prosecutor in the city of Chicago, what she said is that the communities that are affected by the criminal justice system the most trust it the least. If we cannot in any way trust our prosecutors, how can we move forward? We can't. Prosecutorial misconduct has to be dealt with swiftly and seriously. And it needs to be done in a transparent manner so that everybody knows what exactly happened and how we resolved it. We have to keep our trust in the community so the community can trust us. And the way to do that is to make sure that ethics matter in the DA's office. And as DA, I assure you that ethics matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nieves?
Thank you. So the next question is going to be, what is your stance on blanket policies for plea negotiations in criminal cases? And what kind of discretion do you plan on giving your deputies while they are in court? An example of a blanket policy we're referring to are 120 days county jail on every firearm case.
Who starts? Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I am against any blanket policies. We know that in criminal law that there are shades of gray and that there are people who make mistakes, who need to have an opportunity to correct those mistakes. And if you trust the DAs in your office, you will give them the ability to use their discretion to give someone an opportunity to change, to give someone a break. When we have blanket policies, we are not serving justice. We're not looking at people as individuals. And I will never have any blanket policies on limits unless it's a part of the penal code. There are certain crimes that are part of the penal code that have limits. Those are the only times that I would.
Thank you. Ms. Price?
I think my approach to blanket policies depends on what the policy objectives will be. In my office, the objective will be to reduce mass incarceration, reduce racial disparities. And there are certain practices and tactics that have been utilized for decades by district attorneys that we know, in fact, increase mass incarceration and increase racial disparities and lead to outcomes that don't serve the community. And so those things, to the extent that I'm attacking those things, we will have to identify them. And there may be occasions that we do need to have blanket policies. The amount of discretion that the deputies have been utilizing to date has undermined public safety for this community. And so I have to be very cautious and very concerned about how, even if you take away the policy, as a employment discrimination lawyer, you know that there are de facto policies that operate in the same way. And so I'm very concerned about the way discretion has been utilized, and will be mindful of that as I move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steward.
The couple of things that come to mind with regard to this question is that DAs need to be able to consider immigration policies and immigration consequences, with regard to any negotiation. That's a blanket policy. DAs have to consider it. It's required, it's the law. And under me, it's going to happen. So that's number one. Number two, we have to consider if someone is actually eligible for an alternative court or some type of diversion. And that's something that we will work out in terms of guidelines. But with regard to the overall, like a blanket policy other than those two, it's going to be a case-by-case basis, and we have to consider the individual case and what's best for the victim, for the defendant, and for the community. Thank you.
And Mr. Wiley.
Yes, I've been with the district attorney's office for 32 years, and one of the strengths of the office when I arrived in 1990, when me and Kamala Harris started together in the DA's office, we were given full discretion on cases, and that was at the misdemeanor level and throughout our careers. And it's important that misdemeanor DAs have the full discretion on their cases, because that's how you develop judgment on your cases, and that's part of the development process. And I think that when our office went away from allowing DAs to exercise full discretion on cases, it weakened our office. And so one of the policies that I will immediately implement is that DAs will have full discretion on their cases, with the understanding that there are sometimes sensitive cases that you need to go talk to a supervisor on. But for the most purposes, they will have full discretion on those cases. And I also anticipate that some of our DAs will make mistakes, but that's part of the development process. I made mistakes when I was a young DA and maybe gave a deal that was too light, or maybe gave a deal that was too heavy. But that's how you learn and develop your judgment in those cases, and it makes you a stronger office in the end.
Thank you. This is our last prepared question, and we're kind of cohesing the chat questions. And the order will be Ms. Price, Mr. Steward, Mr. Wiley, and then Mr. Wilson. How do you intend, and I, quite frankly, if anybody needs a little extra, I think we can probably manage 30 extra seconds on this one. I'm looking at our time. How do you intend to manage the staff of lawyers, administrative staff, and inspectors that you will have in the office? And what is your experience managing lawyers, a firm, or a large team? Ms. Price?
Thank you. This is a perfect follow-up question. This office is not a testing training ground for this community. I will not allow district attorneys to make mistakes at the expense of people's lives. I have seen that manner of justice from when I started in Bayview Hunters Point Community Defender's Office. You don't play with people's lives so that lawyers can learn how to be lawyers or how to make better decisions. You have to supervise lawyers. You have to have standards that are intended to protect the people of this community, whether it's someone who is accused of crime, someone who has been a victim of crime. We cannot train our lawyers at the expense of this community. So I intend to supervise, as I have for 30 years, supervise everyone who works under my leadership. Number one, I will have an executive team that is going to be experienced, that's going to be amazing folks that have a passion for the people of Alameda County, who have roots here in Alameda County. And we are going to recognize that we have to we have to serve everyone and treat everyone with dignity and respect, and that we are there to find solutions for people, not simply to incarcerate them or to get scores. We're not going to have standards on how many convictions you get or how many years you give to people. We're going to change the criteria. I want to hire prosecutors who want to change lives and not destroy them. I want to hire people who will support prosecutors in that role. Thank you.
And Mr. Steward, you want me to read it again?
Please.
How do you intend to manage the staff of lawyers, administrative staff, and inspectors that you would have as district attorney? And what is your experience managing a firm, other lawyers, or a large team?
I currently serve as the Chief of Staff for Oakland City Council member Dan Call. In addition to that, I served as the Director of the Small Business Commission for the City and County of San Francisco. As a fiscal and policy analyst for the Mayor's office in San Francisco, I dealt with incredibly huge budgets and numbers, so I feel very comfortable with those. In addition to that, I also ran the neighborhood DA program in the San Francisco DA's office, where I managed and oversaw the program to make sure that DAs, paralegals, secretaries participated in community engagement. And I look forward to doing that exact same program here in Alameda County. In addition to that, I also served as a flight engineer on a combat search and rescue helicopter. And last time, when I was deployed to Kenya, I was the NCOIC, which stands for Non-Commissioned Officer in Charge. So we had to make life and death decisions in dynamic situations. And so I feel confident in my ability to manage lawyers based on my experience. And finally, I'll say this is a values question. And my values of service, excellence, and fairness are exactly what I will bring to this DA's office. And I will treat everybody with the same level of respect and fairness, whether they are an attorney, a victim, or a defendant in a case. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wiley, would you like me to read it again?
Yes, please.
How do you intend to manage the staff of lawyers, administrative staff, and inspectors that you would have as the district attorney? And what is your experience managing a firm, lawyers, or a large team?
Well, I've served under 3 different district attorneys in my career in the Alameda County DA's office, and I've promoted upwards under all 3 district attorneys. I've held 21 different positions in the district attorney's office. I've run every division in the district attorney's office with the exception of consumer and environmental protection. I broke through ceilings in the DA's office. I was the first African-American ever to become the hiring DA. So I was the Director of Recruitment and Development. I'm the first African-American DA to become the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and ensuring that everyone in the office is going through implicit bias training. And as I said, I'm the first Chief Assistant District Attorney. I've had to assist with the preparation of this year's budget. I bring more experience to the job than my 3 opponents combined. And you notice that Ms. Price didn't even answer the question of what's her management experience. So I have management experience. In addition to that, I was appointed to the Board of Trustees of the State Bar of California, where we had to manage a $147 million budget, which is the largest bar in the nation. I'm also currently on the American Bar Association's Criminal Standards Committee, where we come together as prosecutors and defense attorneys to set the criminal standards at both the federal, state, and local levels for both prosecutors and defense attorneys. So I bring a wealth of experience to the job.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilson?
Do I get to respond to that assertion?
Well,
No.
we can give 1 minute of rebuttal, no, 30 seconds of rebuttal. But I think that I'm supposed to do that after all the candidates get to respond. So I'll come back to you, Ms. Price, for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beles. You know, this is a leadership question. Anyone could be put in a position. Anyone could be given a title. I I can tell you when I was 19 years old, I started my first business. I hired many of my classmates, 5 of them, in fact, put them to work, actually put money in their pockets. We became bonded. When we talk about leadership, it's talking about when you see something that is wrong, or if you see bad policy, do you stand up? Can you correct it? Are you a person that people want to follow? Are you a person of honesty and integrity? Leadership starts from the top. It's you set the tone. You set the tone for your office, your administrative staff, your inspectors, your DAs. If you have questionable leadership, it doesn't matter how many titles you have, your organization would fail. So of the candidates in this race, what you should be looking at is who has the best leadership qualities, not what titles have they held. That's not going to make Alameda County strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Did you want 30 seconds to respond to Mr. Wiley, Ms. Price?
Yes, my management experience is on my website and in this community as a person who has owned and operated a successful law firm for 30 years, has gone to the United States Supreme Court. I have organized and managed executive teams. When Mr. Wiley was losing the writers case, I was winning and holding police accountable and the California Department of Corrections accountable in federal court. I have reformed the entire California Department of Corrections justice system to protect women working. So I have decades of management and a diversity of management experience that is unmatched by any of the male candidates in this race.
Thank you, Ms. Price. So what we've been doing is we've been looking through some of the questions that were coming through and really tried to see whether the candidates were answering them, some of them. And Ms. Nieves is going to present the questions at this time. Each candidate has a minute to respond.
Great. So the first question we're going to ask is, what is your view of preventative detention? And we will start with Mr. Steward.
Preventative detention?
Yes.
So what I will say is I am a fan of expanding alternative courts and diversion. Absolutely. And if there's a way to increase the numbers of people that have an opportunity to go to behavioral health court, to drug court, to veterans court, and expand the courts overall to include neighborhood court and to include community courts. Those are exactly the kind of things that I want to make sure that I focus on and make sure that people have an opportunity to be successful, because all of those courts have lower recidivism rates than the traditional system. So what that means is we have less victims of crime, we have less crime, and we have safer communities and safer neighborhoods if more people have the opportunity to participate in both alternative courts and diversion. Thank you.
Mr. Wiley,
Can you repeat the question?
what is your view of preventative detention?
No, I think first of all, when you look at Alameda County, they just did a recent study of all 58 counties in California to determine who has the most robust diversion programs, alternatives to incarceration, collaborative courts. Alameda County was #1. We have 17 different diversion courts, alternative courts, and collaborative courts. So I think at the adult level, we're moving in the right direction. I think for the next district attorney of Alameda County, where the challenge is going to be is in juvenile. And I'm the only candidate in this race that has ever run a juvenile division. But the challenge is that the state of California closed DJJ, which most people may know it as the California Youth Authority. So counties have to house their own youth that have committed murder or attempted murder, and the more serious offenses where they would have gone to the youth authority. So we have to determine how are we going to house and where are we going to house these juveniles that have committed these serious offenses, and that's going to be challenging. The legislature also took away the court's ability to manage truancy. And when you look at a lot of the violent crime that's going on in Alameda County today, a lot of it is being committed by the truants.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
If we are talking about preventing people from taking into custody, I think that has to start at the street level. It has to start with having street level diversion, giving police officers the ability to divert people away from the system, away from the court system. Once someone reaches it to court, it becomes problematic. I am a member of the South County branch of the NAACP. I'm a board member, and we are talking to police departments around the county about community policing, about having a presence in a community where you're helping young people get away from the criminal justice system, that you're looking for community alternatives that you can put people into. There are so many organizations out there, nonprofit and private organizations that are geared towards first-time offenders and juveniles, that we need to take advantage of that. So it has to start at the street level, and that's something that I'm pushing for. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Price?
It seems to me that the question is ambiguous, and therefore it seems to be a little confusing to folks. Preventative detention, my view of it, is that for the most part, it's unconstitutional. The California Supreme Court has said we cannot incarcerate people based solely on their inability to pay. And sometimes preventative detention is used in that way. And so if we're trying to detain people for the purpose of making sure that they don't hurt someone else or they pose a significant danger to society, then we have to, my view is that for Alameda County, we have to adopt a better risk-based assessment tool that's based on science and not prejudice and bias and racial profiling, which has been the standard in Alameda County for so long. We've got to look to see, is this person a real danger to the community? And if not, if they have a job, if they're stable, if they've got family ties, if there's a way to prevent them from going back into a situation where they will hurt someone, then we should not be engaging in preventative detention. It's a slippery slope. It's generally unconstitutional, and we need to address it in a very deliberate, balanced way. That's my view of it. And I cannot see the timer, so I apologize.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, and we'll be starting with Mr. Wiley, is the Alameda County judicial system has been characterized as being a catch and release system. Do you think that is a fair description? And if so, how would you change that?
Well, I think that the challenge was I think initially created by COVID. In that initially when COVID hit, it was a catch and release system because people's lives were at risk by holding them in custody and trying to prevent outbreaks at Santa Rita. So when Mr. Wilson mentions that there are 2,500 pending cases and 60 days to handle them, that's because the system came to a halt and cases weren't being processed. And so we now are dealing with the same issues that most courts across the country are dealing with, is how do you get rid of this backlog? But I also think that when you look at our system of justice and you look at the current assessment tool that we use, the assessment tool is out of Virginia. Well, in Virginia, one of the bigger problems is methamphetamine and opioid use. So they give a higher score to drug use than they do to violent crime. And that's the assessment tool we're using in Alameda County. And so therefore you will have somebody commit a violent crime and the assessment tool gives them like a 1 or a 2. And then if you're arrested for drugs, it gives you a 3 or a 4. So the assessment tool that Alameda County is using is the wrong tool for Alameda County.
Thank you.
So
Mr.
that's one
Wiley.
of the things that I would change, is the assessment tool we're using.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
I disagree with Mr. Wiley. The Alameda County system has been a catch and release system prior to COVID. What COVID did was it exposed the flaws of the system. The fact that there weren't as many doors, alternatives to when people came into the system, that police officers and the court system itself got frustrated and they stopped adjudicating cases. I can tell you, I've been at the court level my entire career, so I've seen it from the front lines, and I see the revolving door of individuals with multiple cases, 9 open files, where the courts or the DA is not doing their job to adjudicate those cases. This isn't just COVID. COVID just exposed the flaws. This flaw has been there since I've been in the office.
Ms. Price.
To the extent that that is a critique of the office, I agree. That was prior to COVID. And it goes back to where are we investing and how are we administering justice in this county? Are we just locking people up and giving them quick records or long records and then letting them go back into the community without getting to the root cause of what happened? I've seen it from the opposite side, where people have been arrested and held at Santa Rita County Jail for months or years. And then at the end of when the time comes for the DA to actually prosecute, there's not enough evidence. And so the person is released. And I get the calls where the person's now living in their car or trying to figure out, well, can I get compensation because I spent 2 years in Santa Rita County Jail and I didn't do anything. The presumption of innocence has to be respected, however we administer justice. If we're going to address people who are going through this revolving door, yes, we have to break the cycle of low-level crime by addressing what is the problem, how did you get here, what resources do we have to keep you from having to go back out, commit another crime, and then come back here. That, and if we're talking about organized crime, that's a different issue. But generally, we're talking about people in the community that are just going through this revolving door. And some are able to survive that way, and others have their lives completely destroyed.
Thank you. Mr. Steward.
I would say a couple of things. One, the Humphreys case last year clearly states that bail has to be commensurate with a person's ability to pay. And in addition to that, what we really need to focus on is whether or not the person is a danger to society, whether or not they're going to go out and hurt somebody else. And so those are the conditions upon which we need to think about whether or not somebody needs to be released from custody prior to the adjudication of their case. And that's exactly how we should think about it in all cases. And so I think that that's really important, that that's the standard. The question about whether or not somebody gets arrested, gets out, commits another crime, gets arrested, gets out, commits another crime, that's an incredibly difficult problem that we need to stop. Absolutely. And that the standard upon which I articulated about safety addresses that problem, because it talks about whether or not that person is a danger to society. And that's what I would implement as DA.
Thank you. The next question, we received a number of questions about this, and so we're trying to combine them, but how do you think the DA will, or as DA, you will or could implement the Racial Justice Act within the DA's office? Do you have any plans for a racial justice review unit to oversee that the individual DAs are reviewing these matters properly? And I believe we are starting with Mr. Wilson.
You know, I believe that that many of the policies of the Racial Justice Act should be implemented. One of the biggest problems I have with, since I've been in the DA's office, is that using the criminal complaint to coerce people to plead. It happens more to people of color and poor people than it has to the opposite. I believe that you need to set the tone and set policies within your office to train your DAs on how to be aware of racial bias and to look at how they're using the complaint. I don't believe that most DAs are doing what they're doing because of a racial basis. I believe that a lot of what happened is because of biases that we're not aware of. And so you have to set policies and you have to keep data and statistics so people know what they're doing and know what they're doing wrong. And that's the only way you can correct it.
Ms. Price?
Yes, the policies embodied in the Racial Justice Act are the kinds of things that I've been fighting for all of my legal career. One is to provide access to justice, and two, to make sure that the justice system is fair to people who look like me, to women, to folks who are marginalized, to formerly incarcerated people. And unfortunately, the system has been built so long on racial bias and racial disparities and economic and gender disparities that the body of reform that has been passed by the state legislature has been absolutely essential to, and is an essential tools to begin to reform the district attorney's office, because that's where it's aimed at and that's where the problems have been. I will insist that our deputies follow the Racial Justice Act, that we implement standards to make sure that we are not relying upon racially biased standards, racial profiling, racial stereotypes that have become normalized in the criminal justice system, and then reinforced by the legacy of over-criminalizing Black and brown people and basically creating repetitive convictions and stacking. All of that is part of the problem, that the deputies will have to be trained to reverse that.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Mr. Steward.
And I absolutely support the Racial Justice Act. And right now there's another act that's, I think it's the Racial Justice Act 2 that's working its way through the California legislature that would be retroactive. And I also support that. It's important that the Conviction Integrity Unit consider race and its effect on the convictions that have happened in the past. And that's absolutely something that we need to focus on. So that's number one. In addition to that, we need to study and publish reports on racial disparities in the criminal justice system that are based on decisions in the DA's office. And so the public needs to know exactly what the DA's office is doing with regard to race. I will do just that. Secondarily, as I mentioned before, creating a task force to focus and examine which of the policies exacerbate racial disparities and which are the policies that narrow them. So we can eliminate the ones that exacerbate racial disparities, like ending the death penalty, for example, and making sure that we increase the policies that eliminate racial disparities. And then finally, we need to make sure that we improve policies and training with regard to every single DA in Alameda County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wiley.
Yes, well, when I was approached by Nancy O'Malley to tell me I'm promoting you to assistant too, and I was asked, well, what would you like to do with that position? I immediately said, I want to become the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and I want to create a training for our office. And the training that I felt was most important was Module 2. And Module 2 is implicit bias, a historical perspective. And what we do with every employee of the DA's office is we show them through the policies of redlining how Oakland, as one example, was shaped by government policies in the 20s and the 30s. And we tell them about what the rules and what the laws were if you lived in a red line district, and how the socioeconomic impact it had on West Oakland and East Oakland, and how some of those actions are playing out today. And the whole idea is for every employee in our office to have a greater sense of compassion, that if a case comes across your desk out of West Oakland or East Oakland, you understand that it isn't simply because Black folks live there that this socioeconomic condition exists. There's a lot of government action and private actions that contribute to it. So you need to bring more compassion to the job. And of course, I will support the Racial Justice Act. I've been doing that my whole career in the DA's office.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your answers. We are at time for audience questions, but there are going to be breakout rooms. So if your question didn't get asked, you may be able to ask it casually in the breakout room. We are going to open up the floor for 2-minute closing arguments at this time. And we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Steward.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this conversation, for welcoming us into your home tonight. I really appreciate it. My name is Seth Steward, and I'm running for Alameda County DA. And I'm running because I want to make sure that we keep our families and communities safe, that we build trust in the DA's office, and we restore fairness to the criminal justice system. And I'd like you to think about what resonated with you here tonight. What are the policies that you heard that made sense? What were the things that you heard that really you agree with? And if you do, and if you had an opportunity to consider those things, I believe that you will agree with me. that my policies and the implementation of the things that I want to do here in Alameda County make the most sense. And I will humbly ask you for your vote. Please go to SethStewardForDA.com for additional information. If you'd like a yard sign or to participate in canvassing, ballots are already in the mail and they're headed your way. And I would love to have your vote. And I believe that if you think about the policies here articulated tonight, that it makes sense. And that the Seth Steward candidacy is the one that we want to see leading into the next DA's office. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Wiley?
Typically I could end this segment with kind of a canned, this is like our 15th candidates forum, but I can sit here and talk to you about my experience. I can talk to you about my accomplishments in the district attorney's office. But, I think that really when you look at, we're a $100 million agency. You have to be able to manage not only the lawyers, you have to manage a budget, you have to manage the Consumer and Environmental Protection Division. I would just tell you this, the last person in this group of candidates that you would expect, Benjamin Crump, who is on the forefront of the criminal justice reform by taking on some of the most egregious offenses of humanity committed by law enforcement in the nation. And when he looked at the candidates in this race, he said, the person I'm going to endorse is Terry Wiley. And the reason he endorsed me is just because of my record over the years. The game before last, when the Warriors beat the Grizzlies, the only reason they beat the Grizzlies is because they had the experience at the end of that game. And I think that John Burr said the same thing. He said that the person who has been the go-to person in the DA's office for the last 25 years has been Terry Wiley. Whenever they have an issue of injustice, they come to me to seek a remedy to that injustice, because they know that I'm the person you can talk to, that I will go to whoever I need to go to correct that injustice. That's why I got their endorsements, despite some of my opponents going to them, asking them to dual endorse. And they said, I would dual endorse, but I'm not dual endorsing against Terry Wiley. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm the best person to lead the district attorney's office into the future and bring about the kind of changes that we want to see to our criminal justice system. I'm about fairness, and I will tackle disparities with the same vigor that I have tackled the disparities in the system throughout my career in the DA's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. Mr. Wilson?
It's what's really interesting about this race is that in January of 2020, I went to Nancy O'Malley and I told her I was running for DA. I told her a year before I actually announced that I was running. And one of the reasons why I told her that I was running is because I didn't want this to be a surprise to her. What I realized coming into my office, I was over 40 years old. I always tell people my moral compass was set. I knew what the DA's office should have been, how we should have treated not just our defendants, but our opponents. And what I saw as a veteran DA working in that office is that we had this combative relationship with both the defense bar and with the public defender's office for no apparent reason other than we are on different sides of the courtroom. Justice is not served when a DA's office isn't ethical, honest, and forthcoming with its opponent. I am endorsed not only by just about every police agency in the county, I'm endorsed by defense attorneys and members of the public defender's office, my opponents, because of the way that I carry myself, the way that I do justice, the way that I listen and I have compassion, my leadership skills, my ethical skills. You don't have to be a 30-year prosecutor to know when something isn't working. A leader is someone who steps up and says, no, I will not stand for this. I will not stand for what's going on in this county. I will fix what needs to be fixed. And when I decided to do that, what I did is I went to my opponents and I said, give me your impressions of how you feel. And to a man and woman, they not only endorsed me, but they helped with my campaign. That is who I am. That's who I will always be. That is why I am trying to fix this office. And I humbly ask you for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Price.
Thank you. Alameda County is at a crossroads this year. It's the first time this is an open seat since 1939. I'm the first person to run for this seat since 1966. The question on this ballot is, do we move forward, step forward in 2022, or do we continue to invest in a broken, failed system of criminal justice and a failed leadership team? The county is desperate for police accountability. The only case that was prosecuted before 2019 where police officers were, somebody tried to hold them accountable, was the Oscar Grant case. And I've been endorsed by the family of Oscar Grant, as well as the family of John Bauer and Christian Madrigal, and so many families that have been disappointed by the results that they have received from the district attorney's office that has participated in covering up police misconduct and not holding police accountable. I have been a warrior for civil rights and justice in this community for 30 years. I have 30 years experience solving problems for people in this community. I have 3 certificates of special congressional recognition from Congresswoman Barbara Lee and 1 from Congressman Mark DeSalle. I've gotten honors. This week, I was named the Alameda Contra Costa Trial Lawyers Member of the Year. I got those awards because I earned them, because I've done the work, because I've served this community. My goal is to expand restorative justice programs, give victims of trauma a helping and healing hand, and hire prosecutors who want to change lives and not destroy them, and create reentry programs so that we can break the cycle of violence and criminality and protect public safety in collaboration and communication with this community. Only with better leadership are things possible. You all are lawyers and judges. I ask you, how can you expect someone who has participated, profited, and prospered for 30 years in a broken system to be able to fix it? You should use your rational mind on this, okay? We're working toward a future that prioritizes public safety, redemption, and restoration of this community. I ask for your vote and your support in these final days of this campaign. Thank you.
Thank you all. I think that our timekeeper and other assistant will now be able to create breakout rooms for each one of the candidates if they would like to do that. And I want to thank everyone that asked their questions and participated, and especially the candidates. Thank you so much. And we will come back after the breakout room if possible, given time.
Okay, I'm opening all rooms. Please scroll down to be able to see the breakout rooms. You need to go past everyone's name.